And it is my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I am your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my home in Fort Wright, Kentucky. Also joining me by Zoom is our presenter for this evening, Jacob Hogue, and my assistant for this evening, BCM Service Associate Heather Cook. So thank you both for being here. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining. For access to discounts and exclusive programming, you can learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. Now let's learn more about tonight's presenter. So Jacob Hogue is a public historian with a master's degree from Northern Kentucky University. He serves as the History and Legacies Chair for Cincinnati Pride and is the creator of Queen City Queer History Tours, the region's only LGBTQ plus walking tour company. Jacob lectures at universities and businesses across Ohio and Kentucky, and his work has been published in Ohio Valley History Magazine, Queer Kentucky Magazine, and the Northern Kentucky Tribune. His work centers on revealing the lives of queer people who have too often been erased from history. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here, Jacob.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a quick reminder before we get started, we love participation from our viewers, so please have any questions or comments that you might have. Put those right in the chat or the Q&A feature, and we will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Now, the fun part, the trivia. So, the first person to answer this trivia question wins a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize and, of course, bragging rights. So tonight's question is, which famous writer and LGBTQ icon visited Cincinnati on a publicity tour of America in 1882? So go ahead and get those answers typed in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our screen and turn it over to you, Jacob.
Awesome. You see my screen okay?
Yes, it looks great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining me here for this History Hour presentation on my debut book, Cincinnati Before Stonewall, The Untold Queer History of the Queen City. My plan is to give a chapter-by-chapter overview of the book, followed by a question and answer session at the end. I'm hoping I can make it through all of the chapters of the book, but I do have a tendency to linger, so we'll see how far we get. If you're interested in picking up a copy, the book is available at local bookstores throughout Cincinnati area, as well as online through places like Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And like she mentioned briefly, if you're interested in learning even more about the rich queer history of the region, I do have a walking tour company, which will be starting tours again in late August or early September. It really just depends on the weather. We have two distinct tours. One starts in Newport. It is the Newport Sin City tour, where you can learn about how queerness and the mob intersected for decades in what was known as Little Las Vegas. Also, there's two in OTR. Each are distinct tours where you learn over 100 years worth of history. You can get updates on that on my Instagram at Queen City Queer History. I'm working on a website, but right now the Instagram is where you want to go to get announcements, tour dates, and things like that. Before we begin today, I do kind of want to share a little bit about why I wrote this book and named it what I did. The truth is that I never set out to become an author while doing this. I simply wanted an easy graduate project to complete my master's degree at Northern Kentucky University. My idea was to create a podcast that analyzed existing scholarship, interviewed queer pioneers, and explored the history that had already been written. But what I discovered surprised me. Very little had ever been written about Cincinnati's queer history. And what little scholarship did exist gave the impression that LGBTQ people came out of nowhere in the 1960s and 1970s. And that just never sat right with me. Too often the story of queer history begins with the Stonewall Uprising of 1969, as though nothing meaningful had happened before that moment. This book, then, is an ode to those who crawled so that one day queer people could march. Chapter 1 of this book starts in the Civil War during the defense of Cincinnati in September of 1862. The handsome gentleman on the left there is Lieutenant Julius Dexter, who was a lieutenant in the 106th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. He was a rich young lad. He came from the Edmund Dexter whiskey family. He was a Harvard Law graduate, and his father had actually just died right before the Confederate invasion. So Julius Dexter had a lot going on here. I started the book with the Civil War and with a queer person defending Cincinnati at its time of peril, because I thought it was very poignant that a queer person was leading a regiment defending the city that we all love. After the Civil War, Julius Dexter is living on 4th Street in a grand mansion. And the person on the far right, Eugene Bliss, moves in with him in 1866. The two remain together for the rest of their lives. Now, I came across this story because of a curious obituary. And that obituary in 1897 was for, it might have been 1898, was for Julius Dexter. And at the end of his life, he gave his mansion, a large annuity, and all the contents of the mansion to this man on the right, Eugene Bliss. That was kind of strange for me, but it was the wording of the obituary that really made me curious about this duo. Because after listing all of the things that Bliss would get upon his friend's death, the newspaper reporter put, "But he was simply an intimate friend of Mr. Dexter." And it was that language where they had to qualify that he was simply an intimate friend made me realize that perhaps there was more to this relationship. So as a queer historian, I wanted to find proof. I looked at census and directory records and found that these two had lived together in their grand mansion on 4th Street and then another more fashionable home on 5th Street for over 30 years. These two did not live together because of economic necessity, like many men of the era. But these two, their lives were intertwined, both professionally and personally, from the moment Eugene Bliss comes to Cincinnati. Luckily, these two were men of standing and influence. So when they died, people collected what they had. So I was lucky enough to go in and actually read their personal archives at the Cincinnati Museum Center, where I was left with no doubt that these two were in a homosexual relationship. The book will go into more detail than I can go into today, but a few of the things that kind of stood out to me that made me realize that this was definitely a queer couple was, if you read their diaries, they have pet names for one another. One of them gets mad at the other one for not coming home at a certain time in the afternoon. And while looking through their records, I found that their friends referred to them as Mr. and Mrs. Dexter. I kept seeing references to Mrs. Dexter. I knew Julius had never married. And then I found correspondence where Eugene Bliss was actually answering the correspondence as Mrs. Dexter. If that isn't gay enough, Eugene Bliss was actually the only male member of the sewing club at one point in time. And he and Julius Dexter were members of what was known as the Merry Bachelors Club. And a bachelor was increasingly a term referred to homosexuals in the mid to late 19th century. Their stories are remarkable, partly because they helped build the modern metropolitan identity of Cincinnati. If you look at the Cincinnati Zoo, Music Hall, the Literary Club, these two had their hands in just about everything that was going on in Cincinnati at the time. So it was very strange for Eugene Bliss in December of 1879 when he and Julius Dexter, despite living in the most fashionable home in the most fashionable part of Cincinnati, they were left off of the Cincinnati Social Registry, which was known at the time as the Blue Book. And this Blue Book curiously left out two of the city's biggest capitalists, philanthropists, and citizens. And Eugene Bliss actually gives a fiery speech at the Literary Club demanding to know why. We don't know why they were left off. It's possible that people knew about their relationship. One such person definitely knew about their relationship, and that was Eugene Bliss's best friend. She's known, I call her the first fruit fly in Cincinnati history. Her name was Maria Longworth Storer. She was the founder of Rookwood Pottery, and she also hosted the queer icon in the trivia question today when he came to Cincinnati in 1882. But it was a letter between Maria Longworth Storer and Eugene Bliss that I got a deep sense that people did actually understand what was going on here, because And this revelation actually led me to another rabbit hole of another queer story from right in the area. And it was the story of Richard Von Jackson, a young musical prodigy and farm boy from Steubenville, Ohio, who actually goes to Württemberg. It's a pre-unification German country called Württemberg, where he meets and falls in love with the King Charles I. And King Charles I in 1887 increasingly kept getting in trouble for his associations with American male consorts, one of them being Richard Von Jackson. He had many other guys that were coming in and out of his court, but Richard Von Jackson was actually raised to the status of His Excellency, where other barons and nobles at court likely had to bow to this 20-year-old who had fallen in love with the king. And it was during the correspondence between Longworth and Eugene Bliss that Longworth implores he and Dexter to go visit the court of Württemberg, and says how much better would Von Bliss sound. So as I detail in my book, I believe that there's a pretty good amount of evidence to suggest that their relationship was queer in their time and our own. Much to my surprise, however, I found out that this was not the only queer story from the 106th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. And unlike the lives of Henry Fisher unlike the lives of Julius Dexter and Eugene Bliss, Private Henry Fisher's story ended in a scandal. So Private Henry Fisher joined the 106th Ohio Volunteer Infantry in 1862. He was already in his late 20s at this time. He had immigrated from Germany during the revolutions. He was likely a part of them in some way. He comes to Cincinnati after that, and despite being 5'2", despite not being able to grow a beard, despite quote unquote having effeminate peculiarities, Colonel Gustav Toffel, who one day becomes the mayor of Cincinnati, attested that Henry Fisher was one of the best and brightest people in his entire regiment. And around 1886, 1887, Henry Fisher is looking for his pension. He's trying to get a pension like many Civil War soldiers. Henry Fisher had amassed so many injuries during his war. He was actually captured by John Hunt Morgan, the Confederate cavalry leader who scared everybody in the North. Henry Fisher was one of the people captured by him. So he had a lot of injuries sustained during the war, and by the 1880s, he was elderly, and he was trying to find a pension, or trying to get his pension, but he had lost his paperwork. Additionally, he was trying to get into the National Disabled Home for Volunteer Soldiers in Dayton, which was a sprawling complex, but you had to prove that you were sufficiently incapacitated to get in there. So Henry Fisher, not having the paperwork, went to future mayor Colonel Gustav Toffel at his cozy, albeit imposing home on Straight Street in Clifton, and Toffel furnishes the paperwork for him and sends Fisher on his way up to Dayton. Now, Henry Fisher gets to Dayton, and the doctor is already acting very, very strange to him. The doctor tells Henry Fisher that you're not sick enough to be here despite the multitude of his ailments. But on the way back to Cincinnati, defeated, Henry Fisher thinks this is all over. It is not. The doctor wrote to Colonel Gustav Toffel saying that Henry Fisher was not admitted to this home because he was a woman. And this obviously didn't sit right with Henry Fisher, and Henry Fisher goes back to Colonel Gustav Toffel. I don't know their conversation, but Colonel Gustav Toffel writes another letter and says, go back to the home. And Henry Fisher goes back to that home, I believe in October of 1887. And this time, after a physician's report, it says that Henry Fisher is both male and female. We would call this person a hermaphrodite today. Or so we would call them an intersex person today. They called them hermaphrodites back then, which is kind of outdated language. This kind of sent me on a rabbit hole of researching intersex conditions in Cincinnati, and I discovered that Cincinnati was among the foremost pioneers when it came to researching and classifying what we now refer to as intersex conditions. I believe it was the diagnosis of intersex that allowed Henry Fisher to remain in a veteran's home for the remainder of his life. If he was truly found to have been a woman, they would not have let him live there. But so Henry Fisher kind of their story kind of fades into obscurity. They're constantly moving after the revelation, so they're admitted into the home, but they never really stay in one place for too long. They are kind of transferred back and forth between different veterans' homes across the country, and that kind of speaks to the itinerant lifestyle of queer people in an era when there really wasn't a language yet to describe these people. But like I said, I discovered a history of intersex conditions in Cincinnati dating back to the 1800s. I found reports of what was called sex realignment surgeries on infants and on children who had genitalia that was unclear to physicians at the time. One of the major physicians published a series called Her Two Hermaphrodite Sisters in 1879. This was a guy by the name of J.W. Underhill, who actually helped create the classification mechanisms that we would use for decades after for classifying these people. There was actually an intersex person on display at the Cincinnati Medical College, I believe and sometime in the 1870s. I think it was 1876. Another article I found from 1890 found that a woman by the name of Mary Pearson was arrested, and when they arrested her, they weren't sure which jail to take her to because she was both and neither. She was both male and female and yet neither. And I thought that language was very poignant to how they kind of the existence of these people spit in the face of the gender binary, which was the altar of Victorian ideals. But now we're going to move on to chapter 2. This might be my favorite chapter in the book. It's called Impersonation Beyond the Footlights. And the very first story that I discovered was the story of the man in the bubble up top there. That is Edwin Forrest. Now, I picked the gayest picture of this man that I could find, but he was actually a paragon of masculinity after coming to Cincinnati in the 1820s, where he started his acting career. Now, he had performed as a woman twice in theatrical productions in Philadelphia that were met with a mix of reviews. But this was a gender impersonator who came to Cincinnati and from Cincinnati catapulted his career to unseen heights. He actually became like the Brad Pitt of his time. And his biographers attempted in vain to explain away his gender impersonations, as well as his very close relationships with his best friend named James Oakes. I don't have time to detail all of the evidence of his queerness, but I do believe that he was likely queer as well. As well as his female contemporary to the right of him, that is Miss Charlotte Cushman. Charlotte Cushman owned the Spencer House in Cincinnati's public landing for decades, and she was one of the queerest people in the country. She got away with dating a multitude of women throughout her life, while also performing as Romeo and Romeo and Juliet. So she was cross-dressing on the early American theatrical stage, but then carried the impersonation beyond the footlights by actually marrying women, or sorry, not marrying women, but dating women frequently throughout her life. This was early on in the 19th. This is the mid 19th century, and women were not seen as sexual beings in the way that men were. So Cushman's relationships were seen as eccentric but harmless because men literally believed that if there wasn't a man involved, then there couldn't be sex between them. That's how people viewed things back then, and it's why Charlotte Cushman was able to date so many different women. Moving on. So what they referred to as they said that what Charlotte Cushman was doing was called breeches roles, where she would impersonate a man on stage, but it wasn't convincing. This all started to change in the 1860s with the emergence of what we would now call the female impersonator or the drag queen. Now there are dark beginnings to American entertainment. The guy on the bottom corner there is a drag queen or a female impersonator by the name of Only Leon. He moved to Cincinnati in 1866 with his boyfriend Edwin Kelly. They actually lived right down the street from Julius Dexter and Eugene Bliss, kind of creating a little gayborhood in Cincinnati in the 1860s. They opened up the Academy of Music on 4th Street. And this sounds like a really cute story, doesn't it, guys? The reality is that these two came to Cincinnati to stage what they called Ethiopian burlesque, which is a fancy way for saying that they were doing blackface impersonations. there's no doubt in my mind that these two were perpetuating racist stereotypes as much of American entertainment was doing at the time. What only Leon did, which would forever change the trajectory of not only entertainment but help maintain this performance genre of female impersonation, was that he created what was known as the prima donna character. The prima donna character was vain, obsessed with their makeup and clothing. They were attractive, and they were the centerpiece of the act. Prior to Only Leon, they were only grotesque caricatures of people. And Only Leon slowly moved away from doing blackface impersonations to do what was called the octoroon, which was a 1/8 black person who was a sympathetic character who may have been like the daughter of the foolish daughter of a slave owner. Um, and Only Leon by the 1870s and stuff like that, he's kind of moving out of doing blackface, but it's hard to give them a pass just because they moved out of it. We do have to recognize that Only Leon was probably the most consequential female impersonator of the 19th century. They were incredibly popular, and few drag queens have amassed the level of fame that Only Leon did. Now, Only Leon eventually fades into obscurity despite being one of the most popular entertainers in the country. And that's because they failed to convince the public that the act that they portrayed on stage was truly just an act. Only Leon and his partner Edwin Kelly were harassed in cities all across the country for their relationship. And I believe it was the non-acquiescence to gender norms offstage that rendered Only Leon invisible after they died. This the same exact thing happened to my favorite character in the book, and that is Annie Hindle, who's pictured there on the right. They are the country's first male impersonator, or known as a drag king today. They moved to the United States from England in the late 1860s, and by 1872, they were living on Ray Street in Cincinnati. By the time Annie Hindle had moved to Ray Street in Cincinnati, they had already married several women using the name of Charles. In fact, Annie Hindle married so many women that I have a hard time piecing it all together, and I'm certain that I have missed many, many marriages of this person. Unlike other gender impersonators that came before them or after them, Hindle did little to let the public know that they were in on the joke. Hindle shaved their mustache so that it would coarsen into a stubble. They published poetry addressed to women in daily newspapers. And like I said, they continued to date and marry women throughout their remarkably queer life. While many of Hindle's marriages prior to 1886 had gone unreported completely, it's actually surprising that no one had picked up on what was going on. But by 1886, Annie Hindle was marrying another woman, a woman also named Annie, but her name was Annie Ryan. And she served as a kind of an assistant to Annie Hindle during her stage productions. The two were married in 1886, and unfortunately, a pesky newspaper reporter crashes the wedding reception and sees Annie Hindle dressed as a man marrying a woman, and goes up to Annie Hindle and asks, "What is going on here? You have to explain yourself." And I think in order to maybe not get arrested, or in order to get the guy to go away, Annie Hindle said, "I am a man." So I don't think Annie Hindle actually had any idea of what that would what that would bring to their career, because newspaper reporters thereafter reported about the male impersonator. They were claiming that this was actually a man pretending to be a woman dressing as a man on stage. And whereas Annie Hindle had sold out concert halls and saloons in every corner of the country and even internationally, this question served to derail their career for the rest of their lives. Annie Hindle and their partner would move back to Cincinnati in 1886 briefly before moving to New Jersey, where they spent 5 years. After 5 years, Annie Ryan Hindle dies suddenly. So the wife of Annie Hindle dies suddenly, and it kind of renews interest in this case. Annie Hindle did not take very long to marry yet another woman. They married Louise Spanghill in Troy, Ohio in 1891. And like many of Hindle's previous relationships, this one doesn't seem to have worked either. By the 1890s, Annie Hindle moves back to Cincinnati and is living on Court Street and is married to a woman by the name of Jenny Kramer. Annie Hindle, despite being reported as laying at the point of death in 1897, was actually in Cincinnati living at a residence called the Boxcar with two female impersonators who had performed together for 25 years by 1915. So Annie Hindle was in Cincinnati, but although in an era of increasing knowledge about sexology, Annie Hindle was trying to keep a low profile at the end of their life. Even more shocking is that Annie Hindle was actually living as Charles Hindle in the city directory. The idea that this person could perpetuate all these relationships and live under the spotlight like this without getting arrested is remarkable, and it makes us kind of reassess what people were talking about back then and how accepted it was. I always say that no one knows where or when Hindle died, but if their ghost has returned anywhere, I'm sure it's Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, I lied. This is actually my favorite chapter of the book, you guys. This chapter is called "Be Gay, Do Crime," and I'll have to admit, you guys, finding the number of trans people in my book has changed the way that I view queer people. It's changed the way that I view the trans phenomenon. It was remarkable to me, the number of stories that I found buried in newspaper archives that prove that queerness and trans people have been in the city for a very, very long time. The earliest reference I found came from the Western Spy and Literary Cadet in 1811. And it talked about a singular discovery, is what they like to call queer people back then sometimes. And that was about an aging nursemaid who had spent 25 years as a woman, but was found to be born a man when they died that year. That kind of told me that this has been being talked about for much, much longer than people think. And that's truly the case with the story of Mary Ann Jefferson. That's the woman there on the left. And the newspaper article reads, "Queer, a man known for years as a wife, his secret discovered when removed dying to the hospital. The strange story of Mary Ann Jefferson, who was a Johnson." Mary Ann Jefferson grew up in Covington. They were Mary Ann Johnson then, but they moved to Cincinnati after escaping from prison. Mary Ann Jefferson was a kind of a celebrity in the crime sections of newspapers throughout the 1870s and 1880s. They were always housed in the women's section of the workhouse. And that might have been why they were able to escape, because by 1882, they escaped the workhouse, and they're actually, instead of just moving away, they just moved right across the river. And they moved to Cincinnati's most dangerous neighborhood, known as Rat Row. Rat Row is known for its vermin, its violence, and its squalor conditions. But as writer Lafcidio Hearn noted, it was also known for a kind of cosmopolitan tolerance that was not seen in the rest of the city. And the story of Mary Ann Jefferson proves that completely. Mary Ann Jefferson was not just a criminal. They actually worked on the steamboats as a roustabout, wearing male clothing when it benefited them, but mostly living as a woman for most of their life. They were also politely called a courtesan, which means that they were a sex worker along the levee for over 10 years at the time of their death. Now, it's interesting to note that when Mary Ann Jefferson grew sick in 1889 and had to go to the women's reception room of the hospital, it was discovered that she was not to the manner born. And when the newspaper reporter goes and talks to the citizens of Rat Row, he finds that no one knew of Mary's condition, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. If this was a sex worker with a transgressive sexual identity, the fact that people didn't know doesn't seem to make sense. What is likely is that people did prefer women like Mary Ann. And one of those people was her husband, a guy by the name of Peter Jefferson. They met on the steamboats likely, and they were living at 94 East Front Street for several years at the time of Mary Ann's death. The most remarkable part of the story for me was that Mary's own mother was reported to have attended the wedding of her trans daughter in the 1880s. I think we should all just sit with that for a moment, because I know many parents of trans people now who would not have done that. Also remarkable about this story was that I believe Mary Ann was the city's first activist, and I'll tell you why. Because when she was laying dying at the city hospital and Dr. Hayes was removing her clothing, prodding at her genitalia, insisting that she was a man, she remained defiant, and with her dying breath said that she was a wife and a woman. And that is a prelude to activism, as visibility and survival. The number of stories in my book like Mary Ann's are incredible. One of them is probably my second favorite to Marianne, and that's the story of Frank Goldsberry. I'll give you guys a chance to read the book and find out about his story. But Frank Goldsberry was a gender-bending criminal mastermind who terrorized central and southern Ohio for decades, dressed as a man. It was born a woman, but it would transition to a man and live their entire life that way. There were so many. It was reported that they were one of the number one criminals in the country, and they constantly came back to Cincinnati. Their story is actually absolutely remarkable. Strangely enough, almost all the trans men in my book were named Frank or Freddie. So there's a subsection, a subtitle of this chapter that is "Let Me Be Frank" or "Let Me Be Freddie." And one of the most remarkable stories I found was the story of Frank Williams. He's that handsome person there in the middle. In 1905, after suffering a medical condition, they were rushed to the city hospital where it was discovered that Frank had been living as a man for a very, very long time. Frank even had a college yearbook photo that was allegedly proof that they were living as a man in another city. I tried to verify this photo, and none of the universities that were listed as housing Frank have any records of him being there. So I don't know where this picture came from. I'm sure it's him, but I don't know where it came from. Frank's life is shrouded in mystery because he lied about where he came from. He claimed he came from a famous French actor family and had all these things. And the story reminds you that queer people were under no obligation to tell you the truth. And in fact, the ones that did tell you the truth weren't very intelligent. Frank actually ends up dying in the hospital. But it was reported that he had a number of female fans who found out about the story and were trying to visit him there. Frank, I don't know that I would categorize as trans in the modern sense. A lot of women dressed as men for economic necessity, for movement, for mobility. Women had to wear these hooped skirts and all these crazy things, and a lot of women didn't want to do it. A lot of women didn't want to be forced into housework or sex work, so they dressed as men for economic reasons. There's not enough evidence in Frank's case to say what he was, but his story is remarkable. And it reminds me a lot of a story that I found just 10 years later. And this is the story of Freddie Frey. Freddie Frey, just like Frank Williams, was living in Cincinnati, living as a man in Cincinnati. Freddie Frey was working at a hotel as a bellboy. And he lived with a family. He lived with this nice couple who agreed to take him in. He was an orphan, he claimed, and the family kind of knew what was going on, I believe. And it was over the course of a few years that the proprietor of the house, or the owner of the house, found out that Freddie Frey and his wife may have had a different relationship than they were claiming to have. And the owner of the house where Freddie Frey was staying, actually threatened to kill him. So this is ensuing. So rumors are starting to ensue about the true nature of Freddie Frey, and he's out having drinks with his buddy Charlie Williams at Algire's Saloon on Reading Road one day in 1915. And Charlie Williams, who was a little bit of a troublemaker, starts poking and prodding at Freddie Frey, trying to undress him. And in response, Freddie Frey beat him up. And when the police were called, Charlie Williams looks at the police and snitches on Freddie Frey, claiming that is actually a woman. Arrest them. So Freddie Frey is arrested and taken into police court, where the judge in the case expects Freddie Frey, like many of the queer people that were arrested, to bow down and act like they were wrong. They experienced something completely different with Freddie Frey, who insisted time and time again that I'll not be a woman. There's nothing that you can do to make me one. We really get a sense of how science was coming to save the deviant queer culture of the time. That's how people were viewing this. The church had failed in stopping homosexuality. The American jurisprudence had failed. The jails were full of queer people, but that didn't stop queer people from being queer. So science was increasingly looked to solve this problem. And actually, at the time, there was actually no there was no masquerading law on the books. There was no cross-dressing law on the books in Cincinnati. So when they arrested Freddie Frey, they really weren't sure what to do with them. Queer people who were cross-dressed in the 19th and early 20th centuries were often jailed for disorderly conduct or something like that. And they were later usually given the freedom to leave the city and avoid charges. Um, and with Freddie Frey, they tried a different approach at first. They tried with Walter List, who was the superintendent of a hospital in Cincinnati. He claimed to take on the case of Freddie Frey and claimed that he could, quote unquote, reorganize the woman in her with unusual methods. That's literally what he said. And it makes me happy to think that Freddie Frey was having none of it. They actually reported that Freddie Frey cussed out the doctor so much that the text was quote unquote unfit for publication. Freddie Frey constantly, while he was incarcerated, would go on these tirades, these cursing tirades, and they were saying that it was proof of the man in this person. Now, at the end of their life, Freddie Frey is once again given the chance, or sorry, at the end of this case, they're standing in front of, standing in police court. They're given a chance to, admit their sins and live as a true woman. And Freddie Frey told them where to stick it and continued to live as a man for the rest of his life. He actually moves to Felicity, Ohio, of all places, where he lived with friends, and that's kind of where his trail runs cold. These remarkable stories. Once I found these, I knew that I had a book, and I knew that there's probably a lot more stories like that out there. This story, I'm going to warn everyone, is very, very sad, and it's the saddest story in my book. It's called Too Loathsome and Obnoxious to Print. It starts off with what I believe were gay panic killings in the 1880s. Two similarly named people were either involved in the murder or murdered. It's kind of a strange coincidence, but two people were killed after trying to commit nameless acts on someone. So someone was trying to commit a nameless act and they were killed, and that nameless act was likely sex with another man. So it starts off by showing that they weren't even allowed to talk about it. They called them unnamed crimes, or in this case of these two rabbinical students from the Hebrew Union College in 1891, they claimed that it was too loathsome and obnoxious to print the truth. This is the story of Isidore Frothenthal and Ernest Salinger, who were two rabbinical students at the Hebrew Union College in March of 1891 when they both decided to take their own lives with gunshots. The police who entered the crime scene attempted in vain to make sense of what was all around them. If they were contemporary police, they would have known right away. But this was 1891, and there was not yet a language or lexicon to describe queer people. They walked around the small apartment that they shared at Max Schadenfeld's boarding house on Ray Street, and every piece of evidence served to further confound them. They found a poem called Comrades, which was about two best friends living and dying in battle together. Next to that poem, there were a few roses that were intentionally placed. Their diaries proved that they were infatuated with one another. When they talked to friends and family, they said that these two were too affectionate for their own good, that sweethearts could not have been more affectionate, and that poor Isidore Frothenthal was constantly being teased for being too effeminate and acting like a girl. But the most damning piece of evidence found at the crime scene was none other than a copy of A Marriage Below Zero. It's the first English language novel depicting a same-sex relationship. It was written by Alan Dale just a few years before this case made headlines, and it made its way to Cincinnati. It made its way first to Cincinnati during the obscenity trial of Samuel Gruber, who ran a bookstore on 5th Street. And he was actually entrapped by the Cincinnati Post reporter and the Cincinnati police for selling a copy of A Marriage Below Zero and other quote unquote vile literary works to children that were aged, I think, 14 and 18 years old. So Samuel Gruber's bookstore is the first case. But when that case actually goes to trial, A Marriage Below Zero is not on the list of offending books. And it's because A Marriage Below Zero it had a really bad ending for the two main characters and could therefore be viewed as a cautionary tale against homosexuality. In fact, the Cincinnati Enquirer said that A Marriage Below Zero, despite the fact that the end of the book is the death of one of the protagonists, was a bright and pleasing book that tackled an evil social question with a forcible pen, is what they said about this book. And this goes back to the idea that bad endings were required in order for queer people to be able to be introduced into mainstream society. And the similarities between that book and the real life example I'm telling you about now were so striking that it engendered the very first explicit reference to queer love in 19th century newspapers. And A Marriage Below Zero, like I said, it was the first English language novel depicting a same-sex relationship. It dealt with it was about the wife of a man who suspected her husband was gay and suspected that her best friend was leading him down that path, and she ends up actually finding him dead in a hotel room. The story was seen as a way to deter people away from homosexuality. And but at the time, even those comparisons were not enough for the average person. Even though they found the first queer novel in this person's, at the crime scene, they still looked to ulterior reasons why this could have happened. And in the 1890s, there was this movement of spiritualism, of hypnotism, of the occult. People don't think of the 1890s as being like that, but it was. And they found a couple books in Salinger's room relating to hypnotism. And that made more sense than two boys falling in love with one another, was that Ernest Salinger, the one on the left, actually hypnotized Isidor Frothenthal, not only to fall in love with him, but to kill themselves together. Now, that story is ludicrous for a contemporary person, but most newspapers actually ran this story. And the idea that one of these two were to blame for the deaths of both of them pervaded the newspaper coverage thereafter. It actually was a major part of the eulogy given to these two boys. President Bernhard Bettman beseeched those assembled at the college for the funeral services of these two boys to not unfairly influence their younger companions. So while the parents of these two boys were grieving their loved ones, they were being made an example. In the same way that the copy of A Marriage Below Zero was read as an example against homosexuality, the deaths of these two boys too were seen that way. I always think it's sad. The newspaper reporter who chose to cover this case mentioned that the coffins of the two boys were taken in different directions, bound to spend eternity without the other one. But then I started finding out more macabre stories about this case. And in Max Schadenfeld's boarding house on Race Street, the people who lived there were increasingly growing uneasy about being there. And it was because they kept thinking that they heard and saw Ernest Salinger and Isidor Frothenthal haunting the halls of this place. It shows you that this death remained in the subconscious of Americans for years after their death. And if it's true that they were truly seeing the ghost of these two rabbinical students, then maybe they weren't separated after all. Chapter 5 is called The Impersonator and the Pugilists, The Plate and the Peach. I don't have time to talk about all these stories, but they're all remarkable. The story begins with the world's most famous female impersonator, Julian Eltinge, who is not only the most popular female impersonation of her era, but they are the most popular female impersonator in history. They make RuPaul seem like a regular person in comparison. In fact, Julian Eltinge made more money than Charlie Chaplin at the beginning of the 20th century. Now we're asking why. How could this possibly happen that a female impersonator was one of the most famous people in the country? And it's because Julian Eltinge cultivated, quite intentionally, the aura and bravado of a manly man off the stage. Julian Eltinge staged fights at bars, would constantly be seen trying to lift weights, smoking cigars. He tried to appear as manly as possible. And in March of 1910, he stood across the ring, a boxing ring, at the Cincinnati Gym against the former world heavyweight champion of the world. His name was Gentleman Jim Corbett. And they had an exhibition boxing match where at the end of it, it was reported, Julian Eltinge, impersonator of fair women, vanquishes Corbett. Julian Eltinge was about 5'8", probably weighed about 140 pounds, and was fighting a man who was known as the vanquisher of John L. Sullivan. He was probably 6'1", close to 200 pounds, and he had been in so many, he was probably one of the toughest people on the planet. This made me very suspicious. And I started to research into this, and I discovered that it's likely that these two were dating. People saw them on dates all across New York City at a speakeasy in Greenwich Village. And it was known, and this is outdated language, but it was reported that a gentleman, Jim Corbett, had a thing for quote unquote transvestites. So that makes sense to me why this person would be taking a loss to a female impersonator. And it's because he wanted that female impersonator to be able to dance on stage in a dress without people feeling like it was weird. It's a true love story, and I love that. But Julian Elton was not the only female impersonator to employ such tactics around the same time, even. And one of those people was likely one of the was one of the most unlikely characters in female impersonation history in Cincinnati, and that is Charlie Taft, who's the future mayor of Cincinnati. While his father held the highest office in the land as president of the United States, he performed in not one but two theatrical productions as a woman. Now, he was at an all-boys school in Watertown, Connecticut, so that wasn't that weird to me. That happened all of the time. But it was the newspaper coverage of Charlie Taft's impersonations, or lack thereof, that made me think that they too viewed this as suspicious, because Charlie Taft was like a young Kardashian back in the day. They reported about this boy's every move, everything he did, they reported about. But his theatrical productions were reported about very rarely, and when they were reported about, they were always qualifying. Like this article here says, Charlie Taft was a female impersonator, but is anything but effeminate. Another article says Charlie Taft is not a Percy boy, and it's just them talking about his stage debut. And one of the last articles I found that was that around the same time, at the very time that Charlie is rehearsing for this, a newspaper reporter claims that he's quote unquote being trained in the manly art of boxing. Chapter 6, and I have to kind of rush here a little bit, guys. I apologize, I'm droning on. Chapter 6 deals with a vibrant Black queer culture and the West End. It was quite illuminating to me that all of the queer bars that I found, starting with the Green Door in 1920 and leading up all through the queer bars that were in Cincinnati throughout the 1970s, all of them were segregated. All of them. Every single one of them was segregated. The only exceptions, the only places where Black and white queer people could dance together were at the Black bars. One of them was not even a gay bar really, but it was undeniably queer because of its entertainment and because of what they allowed there. That was the Cotton Club, located on Mound Street and the Hotel Sterling. And the Cotton Club had a troupe of female impersonators who were regular features of the club. The beautiful woman that's pictured under the Cotton Club is Dixie Lee. She's probably the most famous of those female impersonators. I found out that in addition to the Cotton Club girls, as they were called, there was also a dance troupe of gay men. They were called sissified men. They were called the Booty Greens, and they would have dance-offs with the city's female impersonators. The Booty Greens were led by what historian, I forget his name, what one historian called a tongue-tied effeminate director led the dance troupe. There were other queer spaces in the West End, like the Cat and the Fiddle nightclub, which it started off as a strip club. It became a favorite for lesbians in the 1930s and 1940s. But by the 1950s, they started hosting what was called the Jewel Box Revue. The Jewel Box Revue was a troupe of drag professionals from all across the world. It was the first integrated drag troupe. And it was there that a group of female impersonators known as the Cincinnati Fairy Committee started finding out that they could do drag. And many of them, and they're all detailed in the book, they all joined the Jewel Box Revue. One of them is Terry Noel, who is that beautiful creature there by the Cat and the Fiddle sign. She grew up in northern Kentucky, actually got her start at a drag pageant at the Downstairs Club in Kenton County, but then discovered the Jewel Box Revue at the Cat and the Fiddle nightclub. She actually moves to New York City and becomes best friends with the Genovese crime family, who actually pays for her gender transition in the 1960s. Her story is remarkable. She actually lived right down the street from me. I didn't know it until she died, but her story is absolutely remarkable. Chapter 7 is Whispers from the Well, invoking Radcliffe Hall's Well of Loneliness. And I tried to disprove the trope of the suicidal, despondent lesbian in this story. There is a story of a suicide between two Cincinnati-connected girls, but the rest of the women in this chapter spit in the face of that idea. Natalie Barney the wild girl from Cincinnati, although she was from Dayton. It was a salon hostess and literary icon. She's pictured there in the middle. Um, she was actually the basis of a character in Radcliffe Hall's novel. It was the only character that was redeeming in the whole book, and it was based off of Natalie Barney. Natalie Barney was writing explicitly queer poetry. They called her the Empress of Lesbians. She's an amazing, albeit problematic person. I'll let you guys read and figure out why. The person on the left of her is another amazing woman, a lesbian poet by the name of Mary Macmillan. Mary Macmillan wrote explicitly queer poetry at a time when she shouldn't have been able to, and she was actually living in partners with the dean of the Women's College at UC, Dean Louine Petit. These two were luminaries and suffragists who hosted people like Jane Addams at their home in Clifton. Their stories, once again, is also remarkable. The people on the far left, the far right. That's on the far right. There is Kayla Hewson. She was born in Cincinnati, I believe, in the 1940s, and she became kind of the photojournalist of the pre-Stonewall civil rights movement. If you guys see photos before Stonewall marches, anything like that, I guarantee you a woman from Cincinnati is responsible. Chapter 8 is Junkie and the Big Gay Panic, and it deals with Julius Junkie Fleshman, who was the son of the other Julius Fleshman, who was the youngest mayor in the Cincinnati history. He was also the owner of the Cincinnati Reds. And when he died, he gave Julius Junkie Fleshman a bunch of money. And with that money, Julius Junkie Fleshman bought a Carmargo, the ship behind him, and that's known as Carmargo. And it was known to everyone at the time that Carmargo was used for Julius Junkie Fleshman's sense of exploration and his sense of privacy, because he would always have a young doctor with him or a male with him. I've heard reports that he even had a secret way to bring guys into his room without other people knowing. His contemporaries actually called him Queen Juliana as a way to make fun of him. Everyone seems to have known he was gay, which is really strange considering at this time the US government was purging homosexuals from its ranks. And at the very same time that everyone knew about Julius Junkie Fleshman's sexual proclivities, and at a time when the US was purging those people from the government, the US government actually enlisted the help of Julius and his boat. In the 1940s, he helped map out the Japanese islands that we would later invade during World War II. And after World War II, Julius becomes a covert CIA operative, leading what was known as the Farfield Foundation, which was this art organization that tried to prove internationally that communism was a death knell for art, and that the only way that we could have an artistic expression was through democracy. And Julius Junkie Fleshman would stage these lavish art festivals to that end. Now, increasingly, homosexuality was coming under a microscope because of the Kinsey reports, which were published in 1948 and 1953, respectively. They showed Cincinnatians that they had a lot more sex than people thought, and that they had a lot more gay sex than people thought, and it freaked people out. University of Cincinnati President Raymond Walters came out and actually restricted the study to the intellectually qualified, as he put it. At the same time, you see raids in Fountain Square in Washington Park trying to tackle this queer subculture. You see cafes like Club Melody on McMillan Street, which would later become Mother's, another gay bar. But in the 1950s, the cafe owners actually sued the city's police department for hanging around the bar, raiding it, and trying to put it out of business because of the perceived sexuality of the patrons. Chapter 9 is called the Homo Problem in the House of Bamboo. Like I told you guys before, every single gay bar in this book almost is segregated. And in an absence of a place for people like Gail Rose, who's the person pictured there in the middle, she created a world all for herself. Gail Rose was actually the very first person arrested after a huge scandal hit Cincinnati in 1964. Crime reporter Frank Weichel launched a three-part investigative series that used pseudoscience and fear-mongering to pretend as if the homo problem in Cincinnati was way worse than it was. It was worse than the drug problem, he said. And Frank Weichel walked around with Captain Emmett Lyons, and Emmett Lyons told him that this is a problem that needs to be addressed, that homosexuals are overrunning our seats, are overrunning our streets and threatening our children. And the series eventually culminated in a new city ordinance that broadened police power to arrest and entrap homosexuals in public places. And like I said, Gail Rose was the first person arrested under that city ordinance. But Gail Rose did not stop there. By the mid 1960s, they're the Madam of the House of Bamboo, over right by Washington Park, which was actually in close proximity to police headquarters at the time. It was described as part brothel, part sanctuary. They had shows there with boa constrictors. Seems like a wild labyrinth of a place. Gail reported that violence sometimes came to her doors through angry men. But it wasn't an angry man who led to the downfall of the House of Bamboo, but an angry mother. And it was the mother of a 17-year-old boy who had been stealing money from her in order to gain admittance into the House of Bamboo. In December of 1866, she follows her son there, sees what she described as hundreds of people coming and going. That's likely an exaggeration. But immediately called the Cincinnati Post and Times-Star, as well as the Cincinnati Police, and within a few days, Lieutenant Black of the Vice Police was leading a raid on Gail Rose's property. Now, Gail Rose would simply move her operations, I believe, to Mount Auburn, and Gail Rose would remain a kind of mother-like figure to the city's female impersonators throughout the 1980s and 1990s. She's actually given a full front page cover, or not front page, but she's given a full spread in the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1982, where they say Gail Rose is a man and a woman. The article is surprisingly nice despite the headline, but I like this part. It says that Gail Rose has lived, quote unquote, decidedly a kinky existence, which I just thought that was very fun. Chapter 9 talks about a lot of the other gay bars in Cincinnati history. I'll let you guys read those books to figure that out. The most popular of the 1960s and the longest running thereafter was known as the Golden Lions in Clifton. I'm sure some of the people watching this remember the Golden Lions. It actually remained open until the 2000s, but it's likely the longest running queer space in Cincinnati history. Our last chapter is coming to a close, and this is about the birth of activism in Cincinnati. This is called, Mary in the Heaven Downstairs, and it's about Mary Ann Lederer, who discovered the Downstairs Club, or it was also known as the Jacobо, in Kenton County off Madison Pike, or the 3L Highway. It was probably the least likely place you'd ever find a gay bar. And that's exactly why it existed for so long as a gay space. You could barely see the bar from the road as you approached, and it was in a basement, a smoky basement, where queerness could unfold freely. When Mary walked down the stairs in 1962, she found for the very first time, she saw men and women dancing together. She'd been to New York City going to school, and she didn't see anything like that. Attendance from all across, queer people from all across the country would come to the Downstairs Club to be able to dance with people of the same gender. All the queer spaces in the book before this were clandestine meeting places where you'd meet and then you'd go somewhere else to do that. At the Downstairs Club, you could actually have physical intimacy. And it's because the bar was opened, I believe, it was opened by Jack and Helen Speaks. They had a gay son named Bobby Combs, who is known as the darling of the Downstairs Club. They were rumored to have mob ties, but it's hard to know for sure. They definitely had an arrangement with police because after one raid in the 1960s, they're largely untouched thereafter. But it was Mary Ann Lederer who discovered that this place was segregated. She tried to desegregate it and found that this place wouldn't be desegregated until the mid to late 1970s. But Mary Ann did try, and it was this first experience with queerness that led her to think of a sense of justice for the queer people there. So it was July of 1967. It was her birthday, and she's sitting with, it was around her birthday, and she's sitting with her friends at George's on Vine. It was kind of a queer late night haunt on Vine Street near Fountain Square. And as a joke, she's like, guys, for my birthday, I want a Mattachine Society here. And her friends were like, whatever, we'll do it for you. So that is how the first Cincinnati Gay Rights Organization began. Mary Ann was brilliant in that she not only enlisted the help of the popular gay guys around town, she admitted that. She goes, I got the popular gay guys because I knew that everybody else would want to come if I got the hot gay guys to join. So she had a great start there, but she also had an amazing sense of what Cincinnati needed. She also enlisted the help of a radical preacher by the name of Reverend Dave Sammons at the St. John's Unitarian Church. That's actually where the gay rights organization met, was in the basement of the St. John's Unitarian Church, you guys. Queer liberation was birthed at a church in Cincinnati. She also got the help of attorney Alan Brown, who was a First Amendment aficionado. He represented queer people before there was even a name for queer people. So not only did the Cincinnati Mattachine Society boast over 100 members pre-Stonewall by 1968, but it had a legal council and it had religious council. And the Cincinnati Mattachine Society would not exist very long. Marianne Lederer found that men, in their typical way, tended to take things over. And so the Cincinnati Mattachine Society exists until the early 70s, and then it kind of fizzles out because men thought that they could do a better job of leading queer liberation. As my second book will detail, they were wrong. Cincinnati After Stonewall, the 1970s, is my next book, and it details how wrong they were because it delves into the lives of a myriad of queer activists in Cincinnati, many of whom were lesbian and many of whom spearheaded queer liberation at a time when we needed it the most. That concludes my presentation here today, guys. I hope you enjoyed something or you learned something new, and I can field some questions now.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for that excellent presentation. And I really loved that book cover.
Oh, thank you.
So let's first start by repeating our trivia question because we did have a winner. Heather, would you like to go ahead and repeat that question and let us know who the winner was?
Yeah, that question was, which famous writer and LGBTQ icon visited Cincinnati on a publicity tour of America in 1882? The answer to that was Oscar Wilde, and our winner was Janine Cranbrink. So congrats, Janine.
Woohoo! Way to go, Janine. She's actually doing our next Northern Kentucky History Hour in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's
so, great job, Janine.
local florist actually sold out of roses when he came into town because that was kind of his thing. It's interesting.
Wow. Okay. I did have a question that I had that someone asked was, where was Rat Row in Cincinnati?
Oh, I should have said that. It's right where the baseball stadium is today, the Great American Ballpark, or like Yeatman's Cove area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's actually right where Pride is celebrated today is about where she would have lived, which is really cool.
Okay. I do see a comment. Great job. I'll certainly be getting your book and look forward to the second one.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Heather, did you have any questions? I know you've been keeping track of the Facebook and
Yeah, there were two questions. The first one is, what chromosomes do intersex people have?
I think that there are variations of intersex identity. Most people have XX or XY sex chromosomes, but intersex people can have many different chromosomal combinations, if that makes sense. So there's XXY, individuals typically develop as male but carry on an X chromosome. There's XO, which is known as the Turner syndrome. Individuals develop as female but are missing a whole or partial X chromosome. And then there's, I forget the name of it. It's like mosaicism, I think it's called. It's a mix of cells in the body, such as XX and some with XY chromosomes. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm not a scientific expert on that at all.
Yeah, and Jacob, just so you know, you are still sharing your screen.
Oh, okay, cool.
If you want to go ahead and stop, yeah.
And then the other question we had was, could you explain the recent news about drag shows?
Yes. There's currently a bill in the Ohio State Legislature. I'm sure that's what they're referring to.
Probably.
I think it's House Bill 249, I believe is what it's called. I believe that's what it is. House Bill 249 essentially tries to designate attempts to designate drag shows as cabaret adult entertainment. So it would mean that you could not have a drag show in a place that did not have an adult cabaret license. Or you could not, for example, I mean, the law could be interpreted to mean that a drag queen couldn't walk down the street. and be entertaining in any capacity, because what they're doing is not okay. Um, it's completely ahistorical. They've tried to do these bans for a long time, and that's what they learned throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you guys, is that these laws don't work because they're intentionally vaguely worded. And it's because the intent is not actually the law. It's to terrorize people. That's genuinely what they're trying to do, because they know that they have enough legal scholars and lawyers on their team to know that these laws are not going to hold up in court because their legal definitions are too abstract or too broad. You know, what does dressing in drag for immoral purposes? Like, they passed a law in Cincinnati in 1964 or so that banned dressing as a woman for quote unquote immoral purposes. Who defines what's an immoral purpose? You know, so it's this wording that's going to lead to this drag ban being defeated in courts all across. It's going to cost so much money for taxpayers, first of all, but secondly, it will be defeated in court.
And Janine also said such an interesting and important presentation. She said, thank you.
Awesome.
And yes, this is an important part of our history. And I'm so glad that you did all this research and that we can share this with our viewers.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me, and for everyone's questions and for the support and for buying the book too. I really appreciate that more than anything.
And can you let everyone know again how they can get the book?
Yeah, if you guys go to a bookstore in Cincinnati and my book is not there, you contact me immediately, because I will be talking to my publisher about it. I gave him an exhaustive list of places. Places I can think of is Joseph Beth's, I know, has it. Barnes and Noble has it. You can get it on Amazon if you want to be that guy. Don't be that guy, but if you can buy it on Amazon, I guess, if you want to. But yeah, online you can find it, and then any local bookstore should have it as well. And then if you want to get updates on my next book, I'm constantly posting different things that I'm doing, projects I'm doing on Queen City Queer History on Instagram. Please follow me, and you can get updates on the tours, the new books, and all the crazy busy stuff I'm doing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob. And we hope to have you back again, maybe to talk about your second book.
Yes, that would be fantastic. I've started writing and I'm never going to stop. So we'll see. We'll see you in the future for sure.
All the past episodes can be found at bcmuseum.org and on our YouTube channel. But like I said, thank you all for tuning in. And thank you so much, Jacob and Heather. I hope everyone has a great evening. Thanks so much.